Asterisk Cold Space was never meant to feel afraid. But on that day, something was wrong. The station drifted in silence. Far from any star, hidden from every known map. It was not built for war, or trade, or life. It was built for one purpose only. To keep the child contained. No one called it by a name. They only called it the child, because giving it a name felt dangerous. Hundreds of alien species worked on that station. Warriors, scientists, leaders from across the galaxy. Beings who had survived black holes, wars, and extinction, but all of them followed one rule. Never let the child speak. No one knew exactly why. Some said its voice could control minds. Some said it could destroy stars. Others believed it could rewrite reality itself. But one thing was clear. The last time it spoke, something terrible happened. So now silence was law, deep inside the station, behind layers of shields and guards. The child sat alone. It looked small, fragile, almost human. Soft skin, quiet eyes, no sign of danger. But no one trusted that appearance. The guards never looked directly at it. Even the strongest soldiers kept their distance, because fear was stronger than logic. Every movement of the child was recorded. Every breath was monitored. Every second was controlled until the human arrived. He was not important, just a low-level worker, assigned to clean lower halls and carry supplies. No one even remembered his name. Humans were not respected in the galaxy. They were seen as weak, emotional, unpredictable. Useful for simple tasks, nothing more. So when he was sent near the restricted zone, no one cared to them. He was invisible, but the child noticed. For the first time in many cycles, the child looked up. Its quiet eyes followed the human as he passed the corridor, watching him like it was trying to understand something new. The cameras recorded it, the guards noticed, and for a moment, the station felt colder. The human did not see the danger. He was tired, focused on his work. Carrying a small container of food, he walked slowly. Like every day was the same, but then he stopped. He felt something. Not fear, not pain, just a strange feeling. Like someone was watching him. He turned his head slightly. His eyes moved toward the glass wall of the containment chamber. And for the first time, a human looked directly at the child. The guards froze. This was not supposed to happen. No one was allowed to make eye contact. No one was allowed to connect. But the human didn't know the rules. He only saw a child, sitting alone, quiet, almost lonely. Something about it didn't feel dangerous to him. It felt wrong in a different way, without thinking. He stepped closer. Just one step. The alarms did not trigger yet, but tension filled the air. Inside the chamber, the child slowly stood up. Its movements were calm, careful, like it was learning. It walked closer to the glass, mirroring the human's step. Now they stood facing each other, separated by a wall that had never felt so thin. The guards reached for their weapons. Not to attack, but to be ready, because something had changed. The human raised his hand slightly. Not in fear, not in defense, but in a simple, human gesture, a small wave. No one had ever done that before. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the child tilted its head, watching him closely and slowly. It raised its hand too. The entire control room went silent. This was not normal behavior. This was not recorded in any data. This was new. The human smiled, a simple, soft smile. And something in the child's eyes changed. Not power, not anger, something deeper, recognition. The guards finally reacted. Orders were shouted. Move him away, now, but before anyone could reach him. The child took one more step forward. Its lips moved slightly. Just a small motion, almost invisible. The sensors went wild. Energy levels rising, systems shaking. The station itself seemed to hold its breath. Because after years of silence, the child was about to speak. And it was looking only at the human, like it already knew his name. Asterisk, the alarms did not sound at first, but everyone felt it. A silent warning moved through the station, like something unseen had just woken up. Inside the containment chamber, the child stood very still. Its eyes locked on the human, its lips had moved. But no sound came out. Yet something had changed in the control room. Screens flashed with unstable readings, energy levels rising without reason. Systems struggling to understand what was happening. "Pull him back," one officer said, his voice tight. "No sudden moves," another replied. Fear clear in his tone, because they all knew. If the child truly spoke, it might already be too late. Outside the glass, the human didn't understand any of this. He only saw a child standing alone. Watching him, up close, the child looked even more human, not like the monsters described in reports. Not like the thing everyone feared, just small, quiet, and strangely calm. The human lowered his hand slowly, then without thinking. He placed the small food container on the ground near the glass. A simple action, something kind, something normal, inside the chamber. The child's eyes shifted from the human to the food. It had never been offered anything before. Everything it received was controlled, measured, distant. But this felt different. The human stepped back slightly, giving space, like he would for any scared child. "You can take it," he said softly, not knowing if it could understand. Not knowing if it even heard him, the control room erupted. "He's speaking to it. Stop him now. This is a violation." But no one rushed in, because no one wanted to be the first to break that moment. Inside, the child moved again. Slow steps, careful, almost unsure. It reached the glass and looked at the container. Then back at the human, like it was asking something without words. The human nodded gently. "It's okay," he said. For the first time, the child knelt down. Its small hand reaching toward the floor, the moment its fingers got close to the surface. A faint ripple of energy spread through the chamber. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons. But the child did not attack, it only touched the ground. Then pulled its hand back, confused. It looked at its own fingers. Like it was feeling something new. Outside, the human watched carefully. He didn't step forward again, he didn't rush. He just stayed there, calm, patient. Something about that made the difference. Because fear had always filled this room. Fear from the guards, fear from the scientists, fear from the entire galaxy. But not from him, and the child noticed. It stood up again and walked closer to the glass, this time even closer than before. Its eyes stayed on the human's face, studying every small movement. The way he breathed, the way he blinked, the way he simply existed without fear. Then something unexpected happened. The child placed its hand against the glass. A soft touch, gentle, almost careful. The energy sensors spiked again. Lights flickered across the station, but still. No destruction. The human hesitated for a second, then slowly raised his own hand. The guards shouted again. "Don't touch the glass. Step back." But he didn't listen. Because in that moment, he wasn't thinking about rules. He was thinking about the child. He placed his hand on the glass. Right where the child's hand rested on the other side, separated. But connected. The station went completely silent. Even the alarms stopped trying to warn them. Inside the chamber, the child's eyes widened slightly, not in fear, but in realization. Something deep inside it reacted. Something that had been asleep for a very long time. Its lips parted again, this time just a little more. A faint sound almost formed, so quiet that no machine could fully capture it. But the human heard something, not a word, not clearly, just a feeling, like a name trying to exist suddenly. The doors at the end of the corridor opened. Heavy steps approached fast. Elite guards, stronger, faster. Trained for worst-case scenarios. "This ends now," their leader said. The human turned his head slightly, distracted for just a second, and in that second, the child's expression changed, not angry, not afraid, protective. It looked at the approaching guards, then back at the human, and for the first time, the air around it began to distort, not violently, but enough to make reality feel unstable. The lights above flickered again. Gravity itself seemed to hesitate, because something was building. Something the station was never meant to handle. The child took one small step back, but its eyes never left the human, like it had made a decision. And somewhere deep in the system logs, hidden under layers of classified data, an old warning reactivated automatically. A message no one had seen in years. If the child forms a connection, evacuate immediately. But it was already too late, because the connection had already begun. And this time, the child was not just about to speak. It was about to choose. Asterisk, the station had rules for everything, but none for what was happening now. The moment the old warning appeared on the screens, the control room fell into chaos, voices overlapped, orders clashed, and fear spread faster than logic. Evacuate the sector, someone shouted. Seal the chamber, another demanded. But no one moved fast enough because deep down, they all understood one thing: if the child had already chosen, then no system could stop it. Inside the containment corridor, the human stood frozen. Not from fear, but from confusion. The guards had surrounded him now. Weapons raised, energy fields ready, yet none of them fired. Because the real danger was not the human, it was behind the glass. The child had stepped back into the center of the chamber. Its small body looked calm, but the space around it was not. The floor under its feet vibrated in soft pulses, something invisible. Asterisk. Everything slowed down, as if the universe itself was waiting. Inside the chamber, the child stood inches away from the glass. Its small hand pressed against the surface, perfectly aligned with the human's. For a moment, there was no fear. No alarms, no shouting, only silence, a deep, unnatural silence that made even the strongest beings on the station uneasy. Because they all felt it. Something was about to happen. The human leaned closer without realizing, his eyes fixed on the child. That strange feeling inside him was stronger now. Clearer, not just a feeling anymore, a presence. Like something ancient was standing behind his thoughts. Watching, waiting, the guards noticed the change immediately. He's not stable, one of them whispered. Pull him back now. But none of them moved. Because something invisible held them in place, not physically, but mentally. Like their bodies refused to disobey what was coming. Inside the control room, panic turned into fear. This is the event, the older scientist said, his voice shaking. This is exactly what the archives warned about. What event? Someone asked. He swallowed hard before answering. The naming, the word itself made the room colder. Back in the corridor, the child's eyes softened as it looked at the human. Not like a subject observing a specimen, not like a weapon targeting a threat, but like someone recognizing something important. Something familiar. Its lips moved slowly, carefully, like it was choosing the exact moment, the exact sound, the exact truth. The human felt his breath slow down, his heartbeat steady, the strange presence inside him growing stronger. And for the first time in his life, he felt known, not by people, not by memories, but by something far beyond him. The child took a small breath. Then it spoke, a single word, soft, quiet, almost gentle. Yet it echoed through the entire station like a shockwave. Aaron. The moment the name left its lips, everything stopped. Every guard froze where they stood. Weapons half raised, eyes wide. The control room went completely silent. No one moved, no one spoke, across the station. Every alien, every system, every signal paused. As if time itself had been forced to wait. The lights dimmed for a second, then returned, but weaker, Gravity felt heavier. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, because that name. It was not just a name deep within the station's core systems. Locked behind ancient protocols, something activated. Files opened that had not been accessed in thousands of years. Warnings flashed across hidden screens. Identity detected. Forbidden's classification confirmed. Back in the corridor, the human blinked slowly. "Aaron?" He repeated quietly. The word felt strange in his mouth, like it belonged to him. But also didn't. A sudden pain shot through his head, not sharp, but overwhelming. Images flickered in his mind. Stars collapsing, worlds burning, voices calling that same name, not in fear. In surrender, the human staggered slightly. Grabbing the wall for support, the guards still couldn't move. They were not being held by force. They were being held by understanding, because now they knew. The fear they had always felt toward the child was incomplete. Inside the chamber, the child lowered its hand slowly. Its expression calm again, certain, like it had just completed something important. Something inevitable. It looked at the human, at Aaron. And for the first time, it spoke again, not loudly. Not with power, but with meaning. "Found you." The words were simple. But they carried a weight that shook reality itself. In the control room, the older scientist fell back into his chair. "It's him," he whispered. "It was always him." "What are you talking about?" Someone asked, their voice barely working. He looked at them, fear clear in his eyes. "We didn't trap the child," he said. "We built this station to stay away from that name." Silence followed. Heavy and suffocating, back in the corridor. Aaron lifted his head slowly. His eyes were different now. Not fully changed, but no longer ordinary. The confusion was still there. But something else had joined it, awareness. The child stepped closer to the glass again. "Wake up," it said softly, and this time, the entire station felt it. Not as sound, but as a command. Systems flickered. Doors unlocked across multiple sectors. And deep within the core, something ancient began to respond. Because the name had been spoken. The connection had been made, and the galaxy had just remembered something it was trying to forget. The silence did not break, it cracked. Like something fragile had been holding the galaxy together, and that single name had just shattered it. Across the station, systems restarted in uneven waves. Lights flickered back to life, but nothing felt normal anymore. Because now, everyone knew. This was never about the child, in the corridor. The guards slowly regained control of their bodies, their weapons lowered, not by choice, but by something deeper, instinct, ancient, inherited. Impossible to ignore, they stepped back, creating distance from the human, from Aaron. No one said his name out loud again, not because they forgot it, but because they were afraid to repeat it. Aaron stood still, one hand against the wall, breathing slowly. The pain in his head had faded, but the images had not. They lingered, burned into his mind like memories that did not belong to him, stars collapsing under unseen force. Entire fleets drifting lifeless in space, voices. Countless voices, whispering the same name, his name. "I don't understand," he said quietly, but no one answered. Because no one wanted to explain the truth. Inside the chamber, the child watched him carefully. Not like before, not with curiosity, but with certainty. It had found what it was looking for, and now everything else was secondary. The control room finally broke its silence. "We need to isolate him," one officer said, trying to regain authority. "Separate them immediately." "No," the older scientist said sharply. Every head turned toward him. "Do you even know what you're saying?" Another demanded. The scientist took a deep breath, his hands still shaking. "If you separate them now," he said, "you won't stop this. You'll trigger it." "Trigger what?" He looked at the screens, at the ancient files still open. "At the collapse," he whispered. The words spread through the room like poison. Because buried in the deepest levels of the archive, there was only one scenario connected to that name. Not war, not destruction, collapse, not of planets, not of systems, of control. Back in the corridor, Aaron slowly pushed himself away from the wall. The guards moved back even further. None of them dared to touch him again. He noticed it now, the way they looked at him. Not with anger, not even with fear. With something worse, recognition. What did it call me? He asked. No one answered, not the guards, not the voices over the coms, only the child, Aaron. It said again softly, this time. The word didn't cause pain. It felt right, like something inside him had finally aligned. Why? He asked, looking at the child. Why that name? The child tilted its head slightly. You forgot, it said simply. The answer made no sense, but somehow it did. Fragments in his mind shifted again. Not clear enough to understand, but enough to feel. Enough to know that something had been taken from him. Or hidden. The child stepped back slightly, its eyes still locked on his. They hid you, it continued. Who did? Aaron asked, his voice steady but low. The child didn't answer immediately. Instead, it raised its hand again. Not toward the glass this time, toward the air. And the space around it reacted instantly. A ripple moved outward, soft, controlled, but powerful enough to reach every system on the station. Screens across the control room glitched, old data replacing current feeds, ancient symbols appearing where none should exist. Stop it, one officer shouted, but no one could. Because this wasn't an attack, it was a reveal. Hidden files opened one by one, project records, classified beyond the highest level, and at the center of all of them, one word repeated, Aaron. The room went silent again. The scientist stared at the data, his face pale. It wasn't just a name, he said slowly. It was a designation. Designation for what? He hesitated, because saying it out loud made it real. For a failsafe, he finally said, back in the corridor. Aaron felt the shift again, this time stronger. Not just images, understanding. Like pieces of a puzzle slowly connecting. What kind of failsafe? He asked, almost to himself. The child answered this time without hesitation. For them, it said. For all of them. Its eyes moved briefly toward the guards. Then toward the walls, toward the entire station. Toward the galaxy beyond. If they forget, the child continued. If they break the balance, they wake you. The words hit harder than anything before. Not because they were loud, but because they felt true. Aaron shook his head slightly. No, he said. That's not possible. But even as he said it, something inside him disagreed, because the feeling growing within him was not human. The guard stepped back again as the air around him shifted slightly. Not violently, but enough to make space feel unstable. Inside the chamber, the child lowered its hand. Its expression calm again. They were afraid, it said softly, so they hid you. From yourself, in the control room, the final file unlocked. A single line appearing across every screen, a warning that had never been meant to activate. If subject Aaron is recognized, do not engage. No one spoke, no one moved, because the truth was finally clear. The child was never the weapon, it was the key, and the human they ignored was the thing the entire galaxy was built to survive, asterisk. Nothing moved the way it used to. After the truth surfaced, the station felt different. Like it no longer belonged to those who built it. It belonged to him. Aaron stood in the corridor, breathing slowly, trying to understand what he had just become, or maybe what he had always been. Around him, the guards kept their distance. No one gave orders anymore, no one shouted, because authority had shifted without anyone saying it out loud. Power had changed direction, and everyone felt it, inside the chamber. The child watched him quietly. There was no fear in its eyes now. No curiosity either, only calm certainty, like everything was finally going the way it was meant to. "Open the chamber," a voice said through the comms. It wasn't loud, it wasn't commanding, it was careful, almost respectful. The guards looked at each other, unsure. No one wanted to make that decision, because opening that chamber was the one thing they were trained never to do, but the rules they followed were already broken. "Do it," the older scientist said. His voice low but firm. "This is no longer containment," he added. "This is contact." Slowly, hesitantly, one of the guards moved to the control panel. His hands trembled as he entered the command. Layer by layer, the security systems began to disengage. Energy barriers flickered. Locks released one after another. The sound echoed through the corridor like a countdown. Aaron didn't move. He just watched. Because something inside him already knew what was about to happen. Inside the chamber, the child took a small step forward. Waiting, not for freedom. For him, with a final click, the last barrier shut down. The glass wall faded away like it had never existed. For the first time, there was nothing between them. No shields, no systems, no distance. The entire station held its breath. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons again. Not to attack, but out of instinct, because now anything could happen. The child stepped out of the chamber, one small step. But it felt heavier than anything before. Reality didn't break, the station didn't collapse. But the space around them shifted, subtle but undeniable. As if the universe itself adjusted to this moment. Aaron felt it clearly now. That presence inside him, no longer distant, no longer hidden awake. The child walked closer. Stopping just a few steps away from him, it looked up at his face. Studying him one last time, then slowly. It reached out its hand, not to test, not to question, to connect. The guards flinched, some took a step forward, ready to intervene, but something stopped them again. That same invisible pressure, not force, understanding. Aaron looked at the child's hand for a moment. He hesitated. Not because he was afraid of the child, but because he was starting to feel afraid of himself. "What happens if I do this?" he asked quietly. The child didn't answer with words this time. It only kept its hand extended, waiting, trusting. And that made the difference, because for the first time since everything began, someone trusted him without fear. Aaron took a slow breath, then reached out. Their hands met. The moment they touched, the station reacted. Not violently, but completely. Lights across every sector pulsed once. Systems synchronized for a single second. Signals spread far beyond the station, into deep space. Into places that had been silent for centuries, and something out there answered. Back inside, the energy around them stabilized instantly. No chaos, no destruction, only balance. The child's expression softened even more. "It's done," it said quietly. Aaron felt it too. The confusion inside him began to settle. Not gone, but organized like pieces finally falling into place. He looked down at the child. "Why me?" he asked. This time, the child answered. "Because only you can choose," it said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. "What do I choose?" The child's eyes moved slightly, not just at him, but beyond him. "Beyond the station, them," it said. "The galaxy." Aaron followed its gaze. Even though he couldn't see what it was seeing, he understood. This was not about power, not about control, it was about decision. The guards slowly lowered their weapons, not because they were ordered to, but because it no longer made sense to hold them up. The fear was still there, but it had changed. It wasn't fear of destruction anymore. It was fear of what comes next, in the control room. Signals continued to spread, reaching systems far beyond their reach. And one by one, across the galaxy, old networks began to wake. Ancient watchers activating after long silence, all responding to the same thing. The same presence, the same name, back in the corridor. Aaron stood with the child beside him, no longer separated, no longer unknown. The station didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a beginning, because whatever was about to happen next would not be controlled by fear, and for the first time in a very long time, the galaxy was not watching the child, it was watching the human. Asterisk, the galaxy did not react with noise. It reacted with silence, not the empty silence of space, but a heavy, watching silence, like something ancient had opened its eyes again. Far beyond the station, hidden networks awakened one by one. Old satellites, forgotten gates, deep space observers that had not moved for thousands of years, all of them responding to the same signal. Aaron, back on the station, nothing felt small anymore. The narrow corridors, the guarded doors, the cold metal walls, all of it felt like it was part of something much larger now. Something that was no longer under control. Aaron stood still, the child beside him. Not behind him, not in front of him, beside him, equal. The guards had fully lowered their weapons now. Some stepped back even further, others simply stood frozen. Because no training could prepare them for this. No protocol explained what to do when the thing you feared was no longer the greatest threat. In the control room, the older scientists stared at the screens. "It's spreading," someone said quietly. "What is?" The signal. Across the displays, lines of data moved faster than they could track. Connections forming between systems that should not even be linked. Ancient codes unlocking, one by one. "Are we under attack?" An officer asked. The scientist shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "We're being recognized." The word felt heavier than anything before. Back in the corridor, Aaron looked down at his own hands. They looked the same. Nothing had changed on the surface. But inside, everything was different. The confusion was still there, but now it had direction. Like a path he could feel but not fully see yet. The child looked up at him, calm and patient. "What happens now?" Aaron asked. The child didn't answer immediately. Instead, it turned its gaze toward the far wall of the station, as if it could see through it. Through the metal, through the void beyond. "They are waiting," it said finally. "Who?" The child's eyes didn't move. Everyone. At that exact moment. The station lights dimmed slightly, not failing, adjusting. As a new signal came through, stronger than the others. Clear, direct, impossible to ignore, in the control room. Every screen went black for a single second. Then one symbol appeared, simple, ancient, a circle. With a single point at its center, no one spoke. Because they all understood what it meant. Contact, not from enemies, not from allies. From something older than both, back in the corridor. Aaron felt it before anyone could explain it. A presence reaching out. Not forcefully, not aggressively, but with purpose. Like something was asking a question without words. He closed his eyes for a moment, and the moment he did, the noise inside his mind faded, the scattered images, the distant voices, the confusion, all of it aligned into something clearer. Not complete, but enough to understand one thing. This was his choice, not programmed. Not forced, given. He opened his eyes again. The child was still watching him. Waiting, trusting. Aaron took a slow breath. Then stepped forward, not toward the guards. Not toward the control room, but toward the center of the corridor. Like he was stepping into something unseen. "I hear you," he said quietly. The words were simple, but they carried through the station like a signal. The symbol on the screens pulsed once, then again, responding. The connection deepened. Across the galaxy. Systems aligned further. Not in fear, not in defense, in attention. They were all listening now, waiting for what he would do next. Aaron looked around him one last time, at the guards, at the walls, at the place that had hidden him from himself. Then he looked down at the child. "Stay with me," he said. The child nodded once, without hesitation. Because it had already made that choice long ago, Aaron turned his gaze forward again. Toward the unseen presence, toward the galaxy itself. "I'm not here to destroy you," he said, his voice steady, clear. "But I won't let you break everything again." Silence followed. But it was not empty anymore. It was full of understanding. Full of something shifting across the station. The tension began to ease. The air felt lighter, the system stabilized. Not because the danger was gone, but because it had changed in the control room. The older scientist exhaled slowly. "He chose," he said. No one asked what that meant. Because they could feel it. The galaxy did not freeze because of the child. It froze because it was waiting for him. And now it was finally moving again, but this time not in fear, in balance. And as Aaron stood there with the child beside him, one truth became clear to everyone watching. They had spent centuries fearing monsters, but they had never understood humans, because when the moment came, the most dangerous thing in the galaxy did not choose destruction, it chose control, and that was far more powerful.
What is going on? The energy readings are spiking.
We have a containment breach on level 4. All guards report immediately.